Good morning. Good morning. Much better. According to my Mickey, it's 9 o'clock. It's about time to get started, but if you saw all the emails going back and forth, it seemed like Patricia, her family is still having all kinds of problems. Tabitha tested positive for COVID, and Patricia and Ranger had been around them taking care of the kids and all, and then her mom down south, so just need to make sure we keep the Abrams in our thoughts and prayers. And it's great to see the Sextons back and healthy, or mostly healthy, I guess. And did I hear you say Brother Jeremy is home? His joints are giving him fits? I can appreciate that. I understand that. All the others that are on the sick list, keep those in your thoughts and your prayers. Anybody else or anything else we need to think about? Brother Terry, when's your next visit with Tuesday? Keep Brother Terry in your prayers. Brother Jim, lead us in a prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day and for our ability to assemble ourselves together. We pray that you would be with the teacher, that he has already recalled those things that he has prepared. Help us as we listen, that we will take those things into our minds and meditate upon them. We pray at this time also for those that were mentioned as being sick. Pray that you would be with them, be with the doctors and nurses that take care of them, that they might return to their normal portion of health. Be with us this morning as we study. This is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen.
If I
forgot to mention yourself.
Forgot to mention myself, okay. I'll mention that now. If I seem a little dull-witted today or slow, just bear with me. I'm not feeling 100%, and last Tuesday I took a pretty good fall, bruised up some things and sprung some things and scraped some things, so it'd probably be easier to ask what didn't get hurt, huh? What did I say? Last Thursday, excuse me. That's why I got a good wife to keep me straight. Okay. But
You may be like me, fell on your head.
I think my head's the only thing that didn't get hit. I asked her to go out and check the mirror on the car to make sure I didn't break it, because when I went down, I caught the mirror with my bicep. That's the only thing I can figure out, because got a pretty good bruise across there. But and I've even put Brother Terry on notice that if I get going through here and slow down too much, I'll have to get him to stand in for me. So today we're going to do, and I forget the lesson number, but it's on page 35 of your booklet. Let's see, second. I guess we're on the fifth lesson today. Fifth. It's called The Greatness of Married Love. Now, y'all are all familiar with there's basically three types of love that are mentioned in the Bible. And we won't go through those right now, but just sort of keep them in the back of your mind. And item number 1 starts out with the special love that is in marriage. And it says it is different than other expressions of love, such as the love you have for friends, family, children, brothers and sisters in Christ. And then item B says it is a holy love as opposed to perversions. I want to pause on that one just a minute. Today, well, let's go back a few years when I was a youngster, and Jim was a youngster, and a few others were young. Things were called by their proper name. Adultery was adultery. Sin was sin. And then you started seeing things come across, particularly from the West Coast, California, the Hollywood crowd and all, and they would call things, well, so-and-so had an affair, one night stand, fling. It got to be all these names to mellow out what was really going on and not make it sound so bad. Whatever it is, it's wrong. If you recall on one of our first studies that we mentioned that the people that live together before they get married wind up being about 85% of them get divorced. Now the overall divorce rate in America is about 50% as best as we can figure out the numbers based on number of married and number of divorces and years and trying to tag those along together. But what is one of the big things that people say today if they're going to live with somebody before they get married? Well, you don't buy a new car without trying it out, do you? You don't buy new shoes without trying them on, do you? We got to see if everything fits, everything works. Well, if you go through that trial period that way, and yet you wind up with an 85% divorce rate, what's the problem? So that basically comes down to the first question: why do people get married? And then follow that up with why should people get married? If somebody has lived together for 10, 12 years, and then all of a sudden they decide they're going to get married, why? Aren't they reaping at that point all the benefits of married life? I mean, they're living together, they're claiming it on their income tax, everything's. What benefit is it for a person to get married after they've been living together for X number of time? Your turn.
The only thing I would be able to think about would be to make it a permanent marriage. Because if you've been living with somebody for 10 years, and all of a sudden she burns the cornbread, she's out of there.
Well, according to the statistics, 85% of those that live together before they get married divorce. So are you saying that for 10 years she didn't burn the cornbread, they got married and she burned the cornbread and then they got a divorce?
Well, there's nothing permanent about it.
I would imagine for those first 10 years when they were living together, everything was all right. They got their own way and whatever, and put up with each other. Because they would have gotten out of a relationship if anything had changed.
Well,
I see a lot of these kind of relationships with people that I know and am acquainted with outside of the church. And typically the strive toward marriage, the desire to be married, is one of two things. It's either it's going to make you better, which I don't know how that's supposed to work, or most of the time what I see is I think there's still, at least in this area of the country, enough cultural significance to marriage, enough moral background to the way the culture thinks that marriage lends a legitimacy or I guess a better standing than just living together. And I've found people even that are living together that will call that person wife or husband when they're with certain people. Other times they don't, but especially I've seen it if they're around me sometimes they will call that person husband or wife. It's almost like there is a striving or a yearning for the actual proper legitimacy that God set up within marriage. They know that there's something lacking there.
what are the odds, and we talked about this one about 3 weeks ago too. What are the odds that somebody that is in this relationship, not a married relationship, but living like married, if they have a child, or if one gets pregnant without wanting to, what happens? Pardon?
An abortion.
Most of the time, an abortion. Most of the time, an abortion. I gave the numbers, and it's really staggering, the numbers, that how many children are conceived out of wedlock and how many of that percentage is put to death. And it's let me see if I can find that number real quick.
But if you're living together, where is the respect and honor that a man has for his wife?
Well,
Socially, it's still a stigma.
it is. "66% of the people that live together before they get married ,66% of people live together before they get married. In the U.S., 39% of the births are to people that are not married. In 2019, 86% of abortions were to those that were single. 86% of the babies are aborted when the woman gets pregnant outside of marriage. And I told you some of the reasons that they give for abortions. If you listen to the media, they want to harp on the fact that all those that are pro-abortion, they call it pro-choice, but it's pro-abortion, they want to use rape, incest, and less than 0.5% of the abortions are for that reason. 25% of the abortions are because people are not ready for a child, which falls into that getting pregnant outside of marriage. So if we just stick with the Bible's plan, man, woman, marry, then have children, everybody'd be a lot better off. What are some of the problems that you can run into in adulterous relationships? There's a bunch of them. Can you name some of them?
Lack of control is one.
Okay, possibility of disease is one, and lack of control causes all of that. I'm going to tell you something that happened at this congregation many years ago, many years ago. And if my remembering is correct, within a matter of 3 months, maybe 4 months, we had to have 3 deacons step down from being a deacon. One was military and went TDY, brought back a girlfriend. After elders talked to him and all, didn't do any good, divorced his wife, married his girlfriend. The other situation, I think, was even worse, because this one deacon, and I'll call it the modern term, an affair, with another deacon's wife. So that one deacon and cost us 2 deacons. It not only bothered what was going on at the building here, the church, the congregation, but look how many marriages and relationships it destroyed. Now, we don't know what happened, where this girlfriend of this one came from, whether she had a husband in her past or not, whether that affected that, but we know for a fact that it destroyed 3 marriages, 3 families. So this is something that we need to be really, really careful about. The next item says that marriage love is great because it is better. If you go into the Song of Solomon, that talks a lot about this. Married love is better than wine. Wine leads to riot in Ephesians. Married love leads to all contentment.
Diane says she's content.
She's content? Yes, ma'am.
I think that this might be a non-alcoholic wine.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it's talking about it in a positive way. Like it would be silly to compare, well, marriage is better than sin. Well, duh.
Well, you're correct, because if you look at the one in Ephesians is talking about drinking to excess and getting drunk and the riots it's caused and all. So yeah. So in the Song of Solomon, it's the good drink, not the bad drink. How is one spouse incomparable? Item 2 under C. I've talked a lot about my wife in here over the past. I'm going to leave her on the sideline today. Y'all tell me, what makes your wife or your husband so special?
She's one of a kind. She lit up my eyes when I saw her.
Okay. That light must still be shining after 60 years, right? Best friend? What else? Respect?
As far as concerning the life, Proverbs talks about how valuable a good woman is. And so
Absolutely. Item 3 said it, married love provides special delights. A forest of fruitless trees is beautiful to behold, but from an apple tree one may eat and enjoy its sweet flavor. There are many beautiful people to behold in the world, but in married love there is a sweet flavor to enjoy that comes from no other. And then it says, as it causes love sickness. Now, I can look around and know that just about everybody in here is married, has been. Of those that are married or have been, I would like to see a show of hands if you have not been lovesick. Huh? Have not been lovesick? No hands go up. I'm glad to see that. Because what do we say about young people today? Well, even when I was growing up, called it puppy love, lovesick, love struck. See somebody that way? Item number 4, it gives delightful assurance. A crack in a rock can hide what is otherwise an obvious flower, but if we get a glimpse we desire to see more. Married love, when hidden or separated, earnestly desires time together. All of us prior military folks can attest to that, because every time we've been TDY or on a trip without our spouse, we want to be home. We want that wife with us. I thought when I went to Korea in 1986, had to go to Korea for a year. I said, well, I'll go for a year and I'll stay there, and then when I get back, I'll have a whole month's leave saved up, and we can do all this stuff. Well, about halfway through, I decided I'd come home for that month and go back. So I did 6 months and 6 months rather than 1 year away at a time. So when you're away from somebody that you truly love, you want to be back with them. You don't want to be separated. And as a matter of fact, one of my cousins that was in the Air Force a few years ahead of me retired before he wanted to. He was on a special team that they were the first one in, the last one to go back and get things and leave, and called it a Red Horse team. And he had just been overseas, come back, had been home for 8 months, and they was going to send him off for a year again, and that would have been his 4th time within only being home a few months and having to go back for a year or so. And he had his time in and said, nope, going to retire, going to stay home with the family. So.
Apparently, law in the Old Testament was you get married, you get a year off.
Boy, don't we wish we did that today. Brother Clarence just mentioned that in the Old Testament, when people got married, the soldiers, they didn't have to go to war for a year. They could stay home and get things together. I want to skip all the way over to page 37, which will be the last page that we look at today. But I want to key in on the last section there that says the love of the husband is like the love of Christ for the church. And we go to Ephesians 5 for that, Ephesians 5. If somebody would read verses 25 through 31, and then we'll go back and look at each verse. Ephesians 5, 25 through 31.
Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church, and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself before his church, not having spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man hath ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of the body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh.
Okay. Item A there says he is to give himself up for her. And then it goes to verse 25, which says, husband, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Now, this does not mean just a physical sacrifice. It does not mean here that I am to love Andrea and step in front of a truck and push her out of the way and give my life for her. What does it mean? How did Christ love the church?
He did die for it.
He did die for it.
But he chose to be petty. He chose to put himself last and put God's will first.
And that's where I'm going. The time he spent on this earth, what did he do to promote the goodwill of the church? He was always the servant and not the served. He was always striving to help others. And then as the last act, he had to give himself. He had to give his life. But how many men today, and I'm going to divide this up into 3 sections. Old people like me and Jim. Okay, let me rephrase that. Middle-aged, a little younger middle-aged, say from Jeremy's age in the 40s, let's just say the 40s to the 60s plus, and then those below 40. Divided up into those 3 categories. If we look at husbands loving wives and doing things scripturally, Jim has been with Diane 60 years. He didn't do that without some sacrifice, without doing for her. Now, I find in my research and all that younger people don't have the same commitment as older people when it comes to the thought of getting married and what's involved. It seems to me like the younger they are, the easier it is for them to take the easy way out. Marriage all the time is not easy. It's sometimes hard. But if you go into it with the commitment which brings in the vow, today, how many people say the traditional vow in their weddings versus they make up their own about you're the flower of my eye and I'll buzz around like a bee to you, versus honor, love, commit till death. Yeah. Look at it that way. The younger people want to do all these fancy vows that they write themselves, which gets me back to the first question, why are they getting married to start with? So if you go back to the traditional way, the Bible way, God's way, man and woman love each other, want to commit themselves together for life and live that way. So somebody else start talking now. I'm doing too much talking.
Well, we kind of live in a disposable society. Everything is just so temporary and transient, and our attention spans are not like they used to be, and I mean for the younger people coming up. And it just seems like they don't have the proper concept of commitment. To me, it seems that way.
And a proper commitment means that you honor that woman. How much honor has a person paid to his spouse if he decides to go have one of them fancy one-night stands or flings or whatever you want to call it? Hasn't he been totally disrespectful to her and to himself and to God? Second part's there, his love beautifies her in holiness, and that's verse 26 and 27. That he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. How can I make sure that Andrea is presented to God spotless, blameless, no wrinkles. Isn't that part of my responsibility? Isn't that part of her responsibility to me, is to help me get there and be presented the same way? How do you do that? It says his love. So if he truly loves her, which Christ truly loved the church, he would do nothing to interfere with her staying spotless. Questions, comments? Next one is, he loves her as he loved himself. 28 through 30. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself, for no man ever yet hateth his own flesh, but nourished and cherished it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones.
Larry, it seems, at least in the first two, because he's speaking of Christ, there's an unselfish part of it. But now this one turns to a selfish concept. If we love ourselves, if we so do, then we ought to love our wives. So he seems to combine both of those.
Brother Clunch made an interesting comment there that the first two seems to be that it was being unselfish, and and this one is selfish. But doesn't that take us then to the second greatest commandment? We're to love our neighbors as ourselves. So if we truly do this, men, women, if we love our spouses, we love ourselves and look for their well-being as we would look for our own well-being, aren't we a whole lot better off? And then the last one there, in love he clings to her, verse 31. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Joined together. I will bring Andrea up this time when we decided to get married. I had an assignment. I was going to go to the Philippines. If I didn't take a spouse with me, I stayed 12 months. If I took a spouse with me, I stayed 24 months. And when we decided to get married, I told her that, and she said, I'm going with you. Okay. Why did she decide to go with me? What was the point of, and she wasn't going to wait. We were ready. We had everything lined up. And the humorous part of that is that for those that have been in the military, you know the military works on a whole different time schedule than the rest of the world. We decided we was going to get married right before we went to the Philippines in September. I went back to Denver, checked on a few things, called her up and said, we're going to have to move things up because they say that we gotta be married before we can start doing this. We moved it up a few weeks. How many times will we do that? 3? Checked with another section of the military, and now we got to get things done a little bit quicker, so now we have to move the wedding up again. 3rd time, checked with the medicals, and now we got to do it a lot earlier. So matter of fact, she took her last shot the day we left Denver, and she was sick as a dog. But for those of you that have had it, the cholera booster, the nasty one. But you can imagine what her folks and those friends of hers thought. September, oops, August, oops, July, oops, June. So, but in the end, we thought that was a little bit humorous. But we got married because we wanted to cleave, even though we was going to be in a foreign land for an extra year.
The first three words in verse 31, for this cause, that is based on everything else. This is the reason why you need to see the seriousness of this. I asked you the other night about what was the best super glue, making things stick together. Well, he's talking about cleaving, so something that's going to bind them together.
That's right. Bind together permanently. Also, that's a good thing too. When you're that far away, back in those days, no modern communication and everything. Couldn't go running home to Mama and Daddy. Told her it was a long swim if she needed to go back. That's good on the watch. Any questions or comments then on that section?
What was the time? Take a licking and keep on ticking?
No, sir, it wasn't a Timex. It's still ticking. We'll start backing up then. If we go back to number 11, if we just go up page 37 and go back to the number 11, where it says it is strong, and then we get into, this takes us back to the Song of Solomon, chapter 8. We won't take time to read it. But it's talking about, it says, nothing in the natural world is stronger than death. It is inescapable. Well, let's go back to Song of Solomon, chapter 8. And reading verse 6 and 7. It says, for as much as this people refuseth the waters of Shiloah that go softly, and rejoice in Rezim and Remaliah's son. Let me make sure I'm reading the same thing. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up on them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria. Well, I'm not in Song of Solomon, am I? I'm in Isaiah. Let me get to the right verse. Set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which hath a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be can't read that last word. Anyway, the main point of it was in verse 6 where it said that love is strong as death, and then what the reading was there was nothing in the natural world is stronger than death. And then it said the reason for it is inescapable. Then if we back up a little more, maybe if I get my cheaters out, I can read. If we go back to chapter 7 in Song of Solomon and read verses 10 through 13. I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. There will I give thee my loves. The mandrakes give a smell, and at our gates are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old, which I have laid up for thee, O my beloved. In other words, this part just means that it is a simple desire to be with each other. How many of you, and I'm going to put you on the spot now, because I know some of you do this. How many of you really enjoy your time together when you're going someplace? Not getting to the destination, but enjoy yourself together while getting to the destination. Actually spending time together in a vehicle, talking, or at least hearing the other's voice. Andrea doesn't do it anymore, but she used to read to me. Newspaper, whatever, would be going along, and she'd read to me. We'd discuss things. We'd talk about things. Do you enjoy the company of your mate while traveling? Or are you waiting till you get to that destination and then enjoy the time? Your turn.
Yes, I do enjoy her presence. The problem is, I can't hear everything she says.
Anymore, yeah.
Sometimes it's good.
Some.
And the things that I do hear, if I repeat them, it's hilarious because I didn't get it right.
Yeah, so, many years ago when our kids were very young, we had bought a van and converted it into a motel, I guess you could say. We had the back of it fixed up where if we was going to take a long road trip, we'd always go at night. I'd drive at night, and that way Andrea and I could talk, and the kids would be in the back asleep. Can't do that anymore for safety reasons and all, but we would enjoy talking to each other all night and then when we got where we was going, the grandparents would take care of the kids and we'd go to sleep. So that worked out well. But Alyssa, do you enjoy traveling?
Turn our books on, or we're going to, and then I start talking an hour later. I'm like, I'm sorry.
over the den out of the back, yeah. Okay. Brother and Sister Sexton, y'all enjoy traveling together?
We're not really late. We're not really late, and the kids aren't actively hitting each other or throwing up in the back. We have a lot of weather.
Well, that's just part of it. We did that too for many years. Thank y'all so much, and I appreciate you putting up with me today.